Question number 61. A project involves people from four countries. What type of communication method should he use? A. Informal verbal. B. Formal written. C. Formal verbal. And D. Informal written. And the correct answer is formal written. The best way to cut across any kind of a cultural issue or to make sure that there's no misunderstanding among people from different cultures and different countries is to use sterile language, which is formal written. No colloquial language would be used over there. And absolutely the important information without any flowery language would be used to create formal written documentation. And that's by far the best way to crust across cultural issues. All right, let's move on to question number 62. When a project manager briefs his or her team, this is considered dash communication. A. Upward. B. Downward. C. Horizontal. And D. Vertical. The correct answer is downward. When you speak to your team, it is considered slightly lower from the hierarchical point of view, and it is considered a downward communication. All right, let's move on to question number 63. After the stakeholder analysis is done in the process, identify stakeholders. The stakeholders called primary stakeholders would be A. Kept informed on a regular basis. B. Monitored lightly. C. Kept satisfied. And D. Managed closely. And the correct answer is they are managed closely. Remember, the grid that we make, the four quadrant that we make out of power interest grid. And that's the most popular grid. And you can keep that in mind when questions like these are asked. And if you find that the people, the quadrant with high power, high interest, they are also called the primary stakeholders. And the official or the method of dealing or engaging with such stakeholders is you have to manage them very closely. You have to communicate the most with them. You have to even go for any kind of unplanned meeting if that is required. You have to manage them closely. And therefore, that's the answer. By the way, did you know that there is a book which is completely colored and it's only about the notes for PMP exams? All the notes, tips and tricks that would probably need for acing PMP exam. And that's available in a book called Ninja Notes. Have a look. It's all colored from inside. All right. Where do you find this? Ninja Notes for PMP 2021? Well, let's go to Amazon.com. Pass Notes. Right? That's it. Read and Pass Notes. That's my publication. And you have a few other books, and this is the book that I'm talking about. Now, this is available in two different versions. One is Kindle, which is for $9, and the paperback, which is completely colored from inside, is $38. Paperback is now available only for US and a few other European and Japanese clients. In India, we have only the Kindle version. If you're from India, you'll just have to go to Amazon.in. And over here, you'll have to type the same thing, read and pass notes. And voila, you'll get the same. So you have for $449. Question number 64. Which statement is correct regarding the product backlog and sprint backlog in agile teams? A. The focus of the product backlog is on the next iteration. B. Newly discovered requirements are first added to the sprint backlog. C. The relation between the product backlog and the sprint backlog is reciprocal. And D. The product backlog usually does not change while the sprint backlog changes often. And the correct answer is C. The relation between product backlog and sprint backlog is reciprocal. Now, what does reciprocal mean? That they both feed into each other. The product backlog is the high level backlog of requirements or epics or high level requirements that is maintained by the product owner. And they are in a prioritized manner. The most highest prioritized epics or requirements or features that need to be implemented are at the very top. However, when you create a specific sprint, the high prioritized backlog from the product backlog are taken into the sprint backlog. And there they are broken down into user stories. That is the most detailed form of requirements. But there are times when the user stories are not completed in a specific sprint. So there are 5 user stories that were supposed to be done in this sprint backlog, which is meant for a specific sprint. But because of some reason, some of those user stories could not get completed. So what happens to those user stories? It goes back to the product backlog and gets reprioritized over there so that we kind of the product owner tries to figure out, okay, now whatever that has been left out of the earlier sprint, when do we, at what point of time do we actually get it built into the subsequent sprint? So that is why they're reciprocal in nature. This is by far the best answer. But also, let's look at the other options. The focus of the product backlog is on the next iteration, and this is entirely incorrect. The product backlog is a high-level backlog which contains the all possible features at that point of time for the entire project, right? So it is from this that we generate different sprint backlog or iteration backlog. So they are not focused to a specific iteration at all. B, newly discovered requirements are first added to the sprint backlog. Uh, you see, any new requirement that has been found, it has to be added to the product backlog and reprioritized according to the entire product backlog, all the other features which are mentioned in the product backlog. And the product backlog usually does not change while the sprint backlog changes often. Yes, it's actually the other way around. Once you create a sprint backlog till the duration of the sprint backlog doesn't change. However, the product backlog is a living document. It constantly changes. It is supposed to constantly get reprioritized or prioritized or added or deleted with certain features, or addition or deletion of certain features or epics. So it's a live document. So even this statement is incorrect. So among all these, the best and the correct statement is C. Therefore, that is the answer. Let's move on to question number 65. Two of the tools and techniques of the process acquire project team are A, quality audit and CPM, B, negotiations and virtual teams, C, bargaining and forcing, and D, conflict handling and leadership skills. And the correct answer is negotiations and virtual teams. There are quite a few tools and techniques which make up acquire project team, but among them, negotiations and virtual teams are quite prominent, and they both are over here. Now, this is a ETO thing, so I don't even have to go around proving that Y, A, C, and D are not the answer because there's no logic here. I mean, there is logic in creating the ETOs, but well, this is ETOs, right? So either you know it or you don't know it.